Hi everybody, I'm Dianne Devitt. I'm excited to be with you today and talk about one of my favorite topics, which is food. And with me today is Chef Germán Villatoro, who is the corporate chef with Convene. Hi, Chef.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted that you're here, and I have
Thank you.
to tell you that food has always been a passion of mine. I, as an event planner, many years ago, was one of the first to ever produce a session called Thought for Food, and I remember the room was set for 200 people. 8 people showed up.
Well, that's a lot.
8 people cared about the value of food. Now
Right.
the room would be standing room only. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I know, right?
So I thought it'd be really interesting for people to get to know you.
Oh, well, thanks.
You have such an interesting background. So what started you being interested in food? Like, did you work in the kitchen at home growing up? How did it start?
Well, I probably got to thank my mom for this. I mean, in reality, she is a phenomenal cook. I mean, as a kid growing up, she was always doing something different. And as a kid growing up, I would always go in the kitchen. I would have different smells, and I would sometimes receive this pork, different types of pork, fish, chicken, and I was just always interested in what she would be cooking. But the flavors, I got to tell you, she's by far my favorite chef.
Amazing. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in El Salvador. I actually was born there and moved to the United States. I moved to Texas actually in 1983, and lived there for a bit, and then moved around the United States. But honestly, my first years with my mom is what really, as I got older, I remember those flavors and those things that she used to do, that as I got into high school, I was always wondering what I'm going to do. So after high school, I decided to pursue this.
You know, people don't sometimes realize the emotional bonds that food has with us. And you know that you have a scent now. I'm sure if you smell certain spices, you automatically think of your mom.
Yeah.
And you can actually pinpoint the exact time that you were in the kitchen with her.
Absolutely. And like let me give you a perfect example, like the Mexican oregano. Mm-hmm. It has a real different essence to it, right? So when I smell it, sometimes the first memory is when she used to make menudo when I was young, and I remember she used to make this, and that's what the first thing that it reminds me of.
So I'm going to be asking you these things like, what is menudo?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Right?
Yeah, I got this.
So remember that
Yeah.
for later, okay?
I got you covered.
But so, and then where did you go into study, and what is your background up to now then?
Well, I was born in El Salvador, so I grew up with organically. I grew up with no running water, no electricity. So as a kid, we lived on what we farmed and what we raised.
Wow.
Meaning our cattle and, of course, the farming from pumpkins, corn, and all that. And that's how I grew up in El Salvador. When I moved to the United States, I was just in shock how different everything was. You know, big buildings, and of course the fast food movement that happened in the 80s, you know, with McDonald's and all that stuff. And as I grew older, I mean, I started sampling more, but my mom used to cook a lot at home, so we rarely ate out. But as I grew older, I started tasting all these different foods, from Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, and all that. And I was just like, oh wow, that's different than how I grew up. And when I got older, when I was in high school, I just loved that cooking and all this. So I pursued it. When I was 16, I told myself, oh, I'm going to become a chef.
And where did you go to school?
I went to l'Académie de Cuisine in Washington, D.C., and actually Gaithersburg, Maryland. And at the same time, I was working for Clyde's Restaurant Group. I don't know if you know them.
Yes, I do. Yeah,
so I worked for Clyde's for 4 years, and believe it or not, after a year, I got promoted to sous chef. Okay. So I went from prep cook all the way to sous chef.
Sous chef.
I was 20 years old, and I opened the $12 million restaurant, 2 kitchens, 2 floors, called Clyde's of Chevy Chase.
Sure, of course. And then from there?
It all went. I got to tell you, it's incredible how it all happened. I met this chef called Kenneth Duran. So he moved down to Orlando, Florida, and after I did my 3 years in D.C., I pursued my culinary journey. So I decided to pursue, meaning I wanted to see how the chefs cook. So thank God that Tony DeWalt was my chef in D.C. He took me under his wing and taught me so much, but I wanted to learn more. So I moved to Orlando, and I got a job at the Grand Cypress Resort.
Oh, okay.
So I became a tournant cook there, and I did all the restaurants and that. And then after that, I moved to Dallas, and I got a job with Dean Fearing.
Oh, okay.
So with Dean, I started as a saucier. 6 months later, I was a sous chef. Got promoted to sous chef, Spent there almost 4 years, and became his senior sous chef. And then I transferred to New York, came to work at the Carlyle Hotel.
So it's interesting how your journey was with different specialists along the way, and you pick up everything. And then the Carlyle, of course, which is such a bespoke, iconic space in New York, and you have a very demanding audience there, don't you? So
Well, I was part of that movement when the whole mixology trend was happening, from Dale DeGraw
Yep.
and Audrey that was there.
Sure, of course.
And Audrey became to open the Pegu Club, as you know. Dale wrote that book, The Art of Cocktail.
I mean, just for the people who don't know, I mean, Carlyle Hotel is such an institution. Jackie Onassis used to sneak in the back hallways, didn't
stories.
she? And the stories of the Carlyle really make it a special place. But so then where from the Carlyle, didn't you move on?
Yeah, I moved with Carlyle, but I want to say
Yeah.
something about the Carlyle. I worked under Master Chef Jean-Louis Dumoulin.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, under Jean-Louis Dumoulin, I learned the real true techniques of French cooking. And then I got a job at La Grangerie. I became a sous chef at La Grangerie, one of the most, well, to me, I just call it one of the legendary places of New
Chef,
York.
can I tell you this?
Yeah.
When I was 18 years old, my first boss, took me to La Grangerie for Secretary's Day.
Oh,
I'll never forget it. It was my first time with escargot, and it was right out of the movie where the snail just went flying to the next table.
incredible.
But I
they
love
still
that.
have a lot of those dishes.
Oh, I love
And
La
I have to
Grangerie.
tell you, I mean, they did a phenomenal job to keep it still running. And that's where I perfected my French techniques. And I worked under Ian Scully as a chef, and also, of course, the Masson family.
Right, of
I
course.
mean, they taught me a lot. And I also spent 3 months with Charles Masson learning how to do the flowers.
Did you? Which is such a signature
It
part
is.
of that restaurant.
And there's actually a book called The Flowers of La Grangerie. And I learned how to do the arrangements and how do they use that. So that was an intriguing part of my life that really caught my attention. It was not just all about the back of the house. It's about the front of the house as well. So you
Because we all know how your senses are integrated in the
Absolutely.
whole culinary experience. And
Absolutely.
then from there, where did you go from there?
I got a job at the girlfriend at the time got accepted to UT Law. So I moved
Okay.
to Austin.
All right.
And then, of course, Dean Fearing put a good word for me. And then I got a job at Four Seasons Hotel as the chef de cuisine. At the Four
Wow.
Seasons in Austin. Spent 3.5, 4 years there. And then I went back to Rosewood. I had a job offer in Antigua at the Jumbie Bay Resort. So I moved there for a year. That was a lot
Wow.
of fun, actually. And then after that, I transferred to Little Dick's Bay, which is in the British
I'm
Virgin
very
Islands.
familiar with Little Dick's Bay. I've been to British Virgin Islands
Yeah.
before. So your journey has really taken you to so many places from a geographic point of view, from a culinary point of view,
Absolutely.
from a different type of guest point of view, to enable you to be where you are today, which I know is
Yeah.
very
From-
responsible position.
From the single standing restaurants to the elaborate boutique
Mm-hmm.
hotels
Sure.
to the resorts that everyone wishes to go to someday, and learning how to serve all of those kind of aspects, all those different types of environments with all the journeys that I've gone through. I mean, it helped me out. And I learned a couple of things in a hotel in New York that people from New York would come to the island and
Of
expect
course.
the same service from New York or the same dishes that I knew of.
It helped you to understand the psychology of it. Well, you know what,
Absolutely.
Chef? I can't thank you enough for sharing that journey with us today, because I know as we learn more about you that the pieces will all fit in, and this will all then take your story to a different level. So thank you very much for stopping by, and thank you for being with me today and sharing that.
Anytime.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
All
for
right.
having me.
What is menudo again?
Menudo?
Oh, yeah.
Beef
Thank
tripe.
you. All right, thanks.